The next item on the agenda is a presentation from Sandy Flagg from the Waste Not, Want Not Community Kitchen. Sandy is a pillar in our community, and believe it or not, we have people in need in Granby, and we could not even begin to try to help them without Sandy and her organization's help. So you take it from here, Sandy.
Thank you. So it's Waste Not, Want Not, and we are going to celebrate our 16th year this spring. And when we started, it was 3 or 4 members. One of them is no longer here. But I always give credit to Lori Love, who owned a health food store in town. She actually is the person who founded with an employee who worked for Trader Joe's. They started under the auspices of a 501c3 called Make Food Not Bombs. And that was Fred. He was a member of that group, and he was a peace activist, and then he got connected with food. So they borrowed that 501c3 until we could have our own, which we got right away. But we started out in the Congregational Church at 242 Salmon Brook, and we're still there. They gave us a 6-week trial initially. Denny wrote us a letter and said, okay, I'll give you 6 weeks to prove it. I keep showing him that letter every now and then, and he's not even in that position anymore. So he's not the person we have to ask. But they never charged us rent. And I now, during COVID, had the whole building. Literally had the whole building, because nobody was using the church to come and worship, and therefore we had no fellowship. So then when they started gradually taking it back from us, it was a little difficult because we spread ourselves out. We served, during COVID, we served 350 people routinely, drive-through. And it was people who had never asked for help before. People who weren't used to food insecurity. So we had little old ladies driving through, and they would break down in tears, and they'd say, dear, I don't even know if it's okay if I'm here, but I know I'm afraid to go to the grocery store. My son said I shouldn't go anywhere, and I need some things, and so somebody told me I could come here on Wednesday night, and I didn't have to get out of my car. So my first goal was to make that person stop crying and to tell her it was okay, she was there, and that she was welcome again. And then we started putting things in her back seat so that she knew that when she got home, she could find out what was there. And we did that every week in a contactless way. And we just kind of felt our way week by week, and we survived COVID. And then we came back in as a first level. We came back into our dining facility, but we didn't sit down in our traditional way. We gave them take-home dinners, but they came in to get them. So we still had lots of people in close contact and lots of people standing in lines. And then last spring, we decided it was safe enough and we could go back to our original mission, which included a lot more than just food. There is hunger in this community, and there's homelessness in this community, and we don't talk about either of those things a lot. But much more prevalent than those two things is the insecurity and the isolation, which was intensified by COVID, and that we're still regrouping from, and I deal with it every day. So we are now back inside, and there was a real challenge to that. There were people that got used to driving through and getting their car loaded up. All they had to do was pop their trunk, and then they drove through. And they went to multiple places. And then they came in and they took sacked bags of packaged meals out. And now I'm telling them that they're going to have to come in and sit down and be nice with people and have conversations. And they're going, yeah, I don't want that. I just want the food. I don't want conversation. I don't need any friends. I just am coming for the food, lady. And so we had to convince them. And one person, I have lots of stories, but one person one day was talking to me and he said, I have cancer. I spend all my money on my cancer treatment, so I need help with food. That's why I come here. But I don't want to be near anybody. I don't want to sit down. And I said, okay, but you're tongue to back with somebody every week. You're in a line and you're pushing to be in front. Does your cancer doctor know that you're doing that? Because you're saying you don't want him, you don't want to tell him that you're going to come in and sit down with somebody. I'm telling you that you can more safely come in and sit down and find some new friends and maybe some support for what's going on in your life. And it's not going to be any different unless it's better than what you're doing. And our mission is to offer a lot more than food. our mission has always been to offer community. That's our goal, connections. At one time, we had 5 different kinds of Spanish being spoken. Different people from our community, all who lived in the area, came together on a Wednesday night and connected because they got to speak and hear a familiar sound, and they just filled themselves up on connecting with somebody else that spoke a language close to what they spoke. So that's what they contributed, and that's what they took home. And we found that so many magic things like that happened in the venue of getting food. So it's always been about that sort of connection and support. And I'm trying to tell this man who's telling me he's got cancer, and nobody, that's a stopper. That just stops you right there. Somebody says to you, I've got cancer, I can't do anything else. So I said, okay, look, just come, try it once. And he just stopped arguing with me, and he said, I just don't think I'm going to come. A couple of weeks later, I saw him in the line, and then he was eating. 2 weeks after that, I saw him again. He actually came up and talked to me, and he said, I just had to tell you that you were right, and next week I'm going to bring my wife with me, because I didn't know until I came here. I was appreciating the food, but I didn't know how hungry I was for human contact and for conversation. And when you were so adamant that I try it, something about you telling me that made me convinced that I would try it. And he said, I now look forward to Wednesday because I know I'm going to have a conversation with somebody. Somebody's going to listen to me. Somebody's going to talk to me. I didn't know how lonely I was. And I hear that refrain so much now from so many people about that COVID period, that they got to feeling so isolated. So it's kind of a new direction for us to go on. The compensating for the fear and isolation. And now it's fear about what's going on in the world. There's always something to be afraid of. And the people who are very susceptible to that are people that are already insecure, maybe lower income, and they're the ones that are coming to us on Wednesday nights. So we're trying to discern what their need is, and then satisfy it. And we do that through an amazing, I listened to you talk about your staff. It's an amazing group of volunteers. We have over 50 that come every single week. Some people never see anybody else. They go get food, they bring it, they store it. Some people come in and start food and leave it cooking, and some people come in and clean up. Some people come in and break down boxes and take them back to Food Share. There's so many people that come in and do their thing and contribute without any recognition or thanks. And they're just doing it to support the whole process. So we're now serving 100 to 150 people inside in our traditional way, the sit-down dinner. And we're still able to break down our tables and get out of the way so the play people can come in and practice so that they can do their Good Company Theater in the same facility because we share. During the 17 years that we've been there, I said that they don't charge us rent, the church, but we do pay for utilities, we pay for gas, through the monies that come to us from groups like Valley Baptist Church, who's always supported us, the Catholic Fund for Giving, who has given us money several years, individuals in town and organizations have supported us. Community Fund is another big supporter of us. So those are the monies that we use to buy food when we need it, to pay utilities when we're asked to contribute, to pay for insurance, which we have to have a big insurance coverage, and to buy the supplies for handout foods. One of our big expenses now is containers that we have to use, and those things, like everything else, went up really significantly during COVID. But the magic that I talk about happening still does. I'm there because I'm retired now, and I was used to working and having my own business, so I was used to working 7 days a week. So I think nothing of somebody calling me, and somebody did call me this Sunday She had my number from 211, and she said, I got your phone number from 211, but I don't know who you are, but I'm supposed to be able to call you, and you're supposed to be able to help me. I'm homeless. I live in Granby. I live in a van, and I have 3 dogs, and I need some help. So I talked with her for a little while, and then I made a time to meet with her. And it was Sunday that I met with her to give her food. And she is indeed, and has managed to live in West Granby for 4 months during this winter in a van with 3 chihuahuas. And so we talked about it, and I gave her food, and I did an assessment and said, okay, you have to stop living in your van. This isn't going to work a long time, and you've been very lucky. And your dogs have been very lucky, but this is not a good long-term plan. So I gave her a list of all the people that are resources and gave her some direction. And my goal is to help get that person out of her vehicle very quickly. But I did let her know about other places she could go get food, and I talked to her about senior protective services and social services in the town, and let her know that the YMCA lets her go there and take a shower. But there are people, and this woman's not, I mean, I turned 75 recently, and I don't think she's a lot younger than I am, but had never been in this position before and didn't know that there were places that she could go. So she thought, okay, I don't have a home anymore. I'll buy a van, and then I'll figure out how to live in it. And that was her level of problem solving. So unusual that I would meet somebody like that, but there's somebody that makes a phone call almost every day. And it could be somebody who's just a bartender or a waitress and lives week to week, like many people do, and she fell and had an accident, can't drive her car, can't do her job, isn't old enough to get Social Security. Okay, now, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my utilities? Who's going to help me? How am I going to get food? How am I going to get dressed? My 95-year-old parents are helping me. These are the people that reach out on Tuesday and Wednesday and all of the other days. And so we try to bring them in to Wednesday to connect them to somebody else who can help them, and then to get them to the resources that are going to really solve the problem. But that's the bulk of what I do. The fun thing that I get to do is to plan the meal. This week's meal is sausage and peppers, and we're going to serve it on rice. And the good news is that we no longer have to spend a lot of money to buy the food, because we're connected with Food Share, have been for a while. And because we do something called Retail Rescue or Meal Connect, and we have volunteers, some of the 50 that I mentioned, that go every day to the grocery stores, and they collect food that is being pulled from the shelves and it's been deemed good but not saleable. So it's for meat, it's what is before the sale date. They flash freeze it and they put it in a container for us, and we get to take it. So we get we're going to use about 80 pounds of sausage and peppers, and we collected it for a few weeks, and now we have enough. And we didn't buy any of it. We're going to use onions and peppers, which we also glean from the grocery stores the same way. Some of them might have a blemish, some of them might be a little squishy, and we cut around that, and we use things that are good. And you might sometimes buy those things on a shelf in the grocery store in the back, but they can't sell everything that's not perfect anymore, so they give it away to us. And that's what we do every single day. We go to Geisler's, we go to Big Y, we go to the different Stop and Shops, and then we go to some of the businesses around that are connected with us and support us, like Lost Acres and Blossoming Acres, and they give us things that are no longer saleable. So this week's meal will serve about 150 people on site, and we won't spend a penny. We don't, this week, for that meal, we don't have to buy anything, not a tomato, not an onion, not a pepper, not a sausage, nothing. And that, I think, is amazing that we can do that week after week, and we can plan the next meal out because we have extra freezers, thanks to the Lions Club, who helped buy those, and the community fund. We have places that we can store it. So when we get that, when somebody called me today and they said, I got 8 boxes of meat and it's not going to fit in this freezer or that freezer, what do you want to do with it? And a food bank in Westfield called me and said, Sandy, I don't know what we're going to do. I know you're in Connecticut, but I just picked up 8 cases of frozen vegetables, and they're in big boxes, and I can't give them away to individuals. I have to give them to somebody who can cook 20 pounds at a time. So she said, "Do you want them?" And I said, "Of course." So she brought them down, and we made room for them, because that's what we do. When somebody calls and says, "I have this windfall," one day at Tyson, a delivery of Tyson, very expensive chicken nuggets was coming in. A guy came in on Wednesday afternoon. He spoke broken English. It wasn't his first language. He walked in, he said, "I have an 18-wheeler truck parked out on the street out there, and I have a big case." And he said, it's about this big. And he described something that was 4 foot by 4 foot and about 8 feet tall on his 18-wheeler. And he said, "This is my last load. The store refused it. It was a mispick. The company said, find a food bank, get rid of it right now." And he said, "So I looked it up. You're the closest person, but I can't pull in here. Do you have a jack?" And right behind this man walked the food inspector. And so I had to be very careful. Not that we want to do things wrong, but when the teacher's right behind you, you have to be careful what you say. She's right there with her inspection pad. And I said, "Oh, okay, let me see. Who can I call?" "No, we don't have a pallet jack, but we'll get you off the street." And then I started making phone calls, and I called a local restaurant, and the restaurant owner said, "Of course I'll make freezer room available to you," because that's the spirit of what happens. It's just like when we call for a volunteer and we work with the grocery stores to use what they have. And when the Westfield Food Bank called, I said, "Of course we want your frozen carrots. We'll figure out a way to use them." So that restaurant owner said, "Of course I'll make room for you." And then 2 other people made phone calls, including the health inspector, and we got somebody to meet us on the street, and we had all this brawn all of a sudden that we could cut the straps on this huge thing, and we did a relay, and they started handing down cases of, and I was one of them, cases of frozen, boneless, skinless, no antibiotics, all those words that make it really pure and much more expensive. So we got 8,650 servings of antibiotic-free, no additive, pre-cooked chicken that just had to be heated. And do you know how much that's worth to working families who have little kids that love chicken breasts that are so good? We could give them out for weeks after that, the bags all ready for it. And that guy just drove up and said, "Can anybody take these? I got to get rid of them right now. I got places to go." And it was, okay, let's make some phone calls. And it just started happening. So when anybody asks me about Waste Not now, it was a lot of work and a lot of planning, and it's never quite that simple. But after a while, it just got to be the kind of thing that it's a train in motion. There's a need, and we find a solution for it. Something comes to us, and we find a way to use it and not waste it. And I think it's kind of like magic, because it just happens every week. And we keep doing it. So we're very glad to be where we are.
Not magic if it wasn't for you making sure it happened.
And it's the most important thing I do. Besides, my family's here, and I've been here for a long time, and my grandkids still come first, but they all have to get involved in Waste Not. So they know that. So I just hope that we never have to find another place. That's what we hope, that we can continue to adapt to the changes, like the changes that are going on. We make apples. We get apples. They get bruised in the grocery store, and they give us apples by the bushel. So we make applesauce every week, because you can only give so many away. And we give what we can't cook that are really bad to the horse people. But we make applesauce, and we do nothing but put a little lemon juice in it, which Bobby Sullivan taught us to do years ago. Put a little lemon juice in it to keep it sharp. And then we used whatever container we have to store it in, but we cook it every week and we give it away. The health department now wants us to label that. We have to put our address and the date in which it was cooked, and the date, if it's different, when it was packaged. And we have to put the ingredients, apples and lemon juice. And if we ever put cinnamon in, we have to have a different label, apples, cinnamon, lemon juice. If we give somebody their meal, we have to tell them, we have to have a sign about what's in it and what kind of allergens we're cooking with. And then if they take home a meal after they eat, if they have perhaps an invalid or somebody who couldn't come, they want a meal to take home that night, we can do that, but we have to have a label to go in the container because the health department says it may not be eaten by the person that you assume it's going to be eaten by. So if somebody takes a sealed container home with a leftover meal, you have to have every ingredient labeled on it. So I have to have more volunteers now that want to do that kind of behind the scenes thing. We have to label everything. So we have to constantly adapt what we're doing. One of the things COVID gave us was something called Hunt to Feed. And this year, there's a national organization that really got established in our area, and I get calls from a coordinator who says, I have a fresh killed deer, and it's being processed in Suffield, and if you would pick it up, it will be in 5-pound packages, already ready for vacuum sealed, but you need to pick it up within the next 8 hours, and it needs to go immediately into, so you have to comply with certain standards. But that was a whole new resource for us, so of course I said yes, and of course I went there, and then I started calling who would like deer meat, because we may not be able to work this into our menu today. Maybe next week we could do a deer meat chili, and we did, and it was delicious. But it was who wants deer meat? Well, there were lots of families that said, oh, I would love my kids to have deer meat. So there's a family with 70 people in the family. It's a foster family. And I always include them when we have some extra thing, and I can call a big family like that and say, would you have space for this in your storage? Would you like it? Would it be of value to us? And sometimes they say no, but rarely. But they jumped on the deer meat wagon right away. But then I started getting all these calls from people that said, oh, next time a hunter calls and you get that, will you please put me on the list? So I now have a waiting list for people, and we got a bear this winter. So I think 4 deer and a bear. So that's another thing that we offer. My hairdresser, who doesn't have a salon anymore because there was a small salon and COVID killed it, is now doing haircuts in people's homes. And so she said, Sandy, if you had insurance, if I didn't have to worry about insurance, I would love to come and give haircuts, because you have veterans that come there. Yes, we do have veterans. And she said, I've always wanted to be able to do free haircuts. So in November of this year, we started offering haircuts. And people come in and get their haircut. They get their eyebrows trimmed. They get their mustaches and their beards. And they take off their hat and hair comes out like this. And then they walk out and people see them and they stand up and applaud them because they never saw them looking like that. Because now all of a sudden they've got their hair. And she did it lovingly because she felt it was a privilege to cut their hair. So there's a difference in the way they walked out. And now we have people who say, is this the week the haircut lady comes? Because she comes every other week. And the kids want to come with their parents because now they want to get haircuts. So it's just another service because we're always thinking of what more can we do without being offensive or pushy or invasive into somebody's space. What can we offer that's an additional service that's appreciated? So it's where there's a need, we try to find a solution. So,
Thank you,
thanks.
Sandy. Don't go anywhere yet. Let's start down this end. Mark, do you have any questions?
No, thanks. I know that you've worked with Then South Church, not Congregational Church, for a long time, and I'm glad that the two groups were able to work together and make use of that space.
I think it's important that we're reminded that there are people in town that do have needs, and very grateful that
Sadly,
your
that's always
organization
true.
is around to help. What can the community do to help you?
Well, just that. When we put out a need, we get it. And when people have extra things, I always have it after a holiday. People will call and say, I got an extra turkey, or somebody did this, or I had a huge celebration. And even employees here had a huge celebration and I have leftover cake, or I had leftover this or leftover that, and may we share it? People really do want to share. And the idea, and maybe it's New England, I don't know what it is, but people don't want to waste. And so they appreciate the fact that this is a place where we can. And sometimes I will actually say to somebody, This man brought us some food last week in a box, and he wanted to share it, and I accepted it. And then I went through it, and the things that were 10 years old and had little mouse nibbles on the boxes, and I took it right out and put it in the dumpster, but I didn't say that to him, because so he still felt that he was sharing. I hope he doesn't bring me a lot more, but we do. We try not to say no, and we try to encourage people to think of ways that they can share, and it is kind of amazing. Sometimes people want to share, as I said, a little more than we can, and then I wanted to share this furniture, when are you going to come and get it, you know? And then I get the next call from this little old lady who's saying, okay, I want to give away a bed and a chair and a table, and I want somebody to come pick it up today. And we can't always comply to that sort of thing, you know? But generally, it's not too hard to find the need and the solution, because they're both out there floating around. So sometimes it's just the connection that's missing.
Right.
Simply, thank you for the story. It's a story the community needs to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
Kelly?
No, thank you for you and the team. Amazing things.
Yeah, same. Thanks for all you do.
All right. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay. Good.
Keep up the great work.